American elections and its outcome have a huge impact on the globe and various countries around the world and its policies. And that is the same reason why we have been discussing about this festival of democracy, that is the battle between Joe Biden and President Donald Trump. To discuss more on this, we have Mr. Nirmal Ibrahim, who is a columnist, an international political analyst, and he appears on the mainstream media outlets quite often to discuss about the international political events. Let's welcome him. Welcome, Mr. Nirmal Ibrahim.
Hi.
So, from the last few days, we have been hearing a lot about the American elections. And there is a chaos which exists in the minds of the viewers as to what is the outcome of the elections and what is happening with regard to the lawsuits filed by Donald Trump. So what exactly is the recent political scenario post-elections?
Right. So what we have to understand about the elections is that the media, number one, media does not call an election. Media does not decide the winner of an election, so especially in a disputed election. So in this case, I would say Joe Biden is the unofficial president. He's not official yet. What makes a president official is after the electoral votes are awarded by states, and he becomes, after the inauguration on Jan 20th, that's when he officially becomes the president. Now you could say that he's a projected winner. And the other thing is that there are plenty of irregularities still persisting in the United States, which we have to see how it goes, because there are litigations filed by Donald Trump in all 5 states, the swing states where he lost his lead. So there's plenty happening. We are still not sure, although I would say 90% Joe Biden could well be the president of the United States, but we cannot rule out the possibility of Donald Trump being the president either.
If that is really the case, why would Republicans find it suspicious?
Well, one of the reasons Republicans find it suspicious is because of the trend. Because if you look at elections, there's usually a red wave or a blue wave that happens in United States elections. So a red wave would mean that there is a trend towards Republicans. A blue wave would mean that there's a trend towards Democrats. But this time around, if you look at the Senate, starting from the Senate, Republicans gained in the Senate, Republicans gained in the House of Representatives, Republicans retained all governorships and also won a governorship in Montana after a 16-year wait. So there's plenty that's happened for Republicans in their favor, and this is which is probably why Republicans are concerned. Also, if you look at the votes that Donald Trump got, he got 11 million votes than he did last time in 2016. He got 8 million more votes than Barack Obama in 2012. He got the most number of black votes this time around. In fact, 20% of black votes, 5% black female votes, most number of Hispanic votes. In fact, he's the only president in 60 years to get the most number of non-white votes. So if you look at it, if you look at all the trends, it had to go in Republicans' favor, but unfortunately for the presidential race, it did not, which is probably why they're concerned.
Mr. Nirmal, there has been a widespread discussion on the voter fraud. So now, has it happened? What is your take on that?
Right. So what we have to understand is that there is a difference between voter fraud and voter irregularities. So when Donald Trump says or mentions the umbrella term voter fraud, it also includes irregularities in voting. And for your specific question of has it happened before? Absolutely, it has happened in New Jersey. This year, in May 2020, they had an all-mail-in election where at the end of the election, 4 of the operatives were caught, out of which 2 were election officials. 1 confessed to the court of having stolen ballots. So a lot of things like these have happened. In Virginia, what has happened? So before I get into the details, I would want to make sure that the audience understands the difference between absentee ballots and mail-in ballots. So absentee ballots is a system where if I'm not willing to go vote in person, I could request for an absentee ballot in my name to my address, which I will receive and I can vote and sign on it. So that's more authentic and there's less possibility of a fraud. Whereas mail-in ballots are actually printed in thousands and sent out to, let's say, orphanages, churches, old-age homes in huge numbers, unsolicited. And so it reaches there and you don't know what happens after that, because there are cases in Virginia where dead people have actually received a mail-in ballot and where even pets have received it. Dogs and cats have received it. People who have changed their address and moved to another place, they have received it. So all kinds of things like these have happened in the United States. So you can't say that Trump's claims are baseless. Also, if you look at liberal media that now says that voter fraud, the fact that voter fraud is expansive is absolute nonsense, is what they say right now. But if you look at an article, which I can show you, written in the New York Times in 2012, they have clearly mentioned, there are in fact 2 or 3 articles written throughout 2012 to 13, they've specifically mentioned that voter fraud is extensive in the United States. Voter fraud provides a possibility of mail-in ballots provide a possibility of irregularity and fraud. They have mentioned it. Now they've retracted the statement. Now they call the president an idiot for even mentioning that there could be a possibility of irregularity.
So maybe that is the case where the Donald Trump administration is trying to establish the voter fraud. Now, there's a candid question which is coming into my mind. That is, does Donald Trump still have a chance? What is the possibility?
Right. So if I were to quantify the possibility, I would say 90% Biden, 10% Trump. You cannot rule out Trump yet, but there's still 10% possibility. Why is that 10% and why is that a possibility? The answer is simple. So as of now, if you look at the leads, Georgia might as well go to Joe Biden because he's already leading by around 12,000 votes. So if it goes to Joe Biden, the number of electoral votes will be 306 for Joe Biden and 232 for Donald Trump. And so if Trump were to make a comeback with the litigations and with the evidences that he has, if he successfully comes out, he will have to successfully come out in not just one state, but 3 states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, or any of these 5 states that he's filed a litigation for. So that is the biggest challenge for Donald Trump. If it was about one state, there might have been a chance. If you look at 2000 election, Bush versus Gore, it was only one state. It was Florida. They had to wait for 37 days to finally declare a winner. But this time around, there are 5 states out of which Trump has to win at least 3. And out of which there's a huge challenge in Michigan as well, because the number of the lead in Michigan for Joe Biden is close to 150,000. So it becomes hard for him as we move on. But can we rule out the possibility? No.
Then, Mr. Nirmal, why aren't the Republicans coming in support of Donald Trump in open?
Well, they are coming out in support. If you look at people like Lindsey Graham have come out in support, Ted Cruz has come out in support, Bill Barr has come out in support, Mike Pompeo has come out in support. There are plenty of conservative commentators and politicians who have come out in support of Donald Trump. Unfortunately, the media doesn't show you that. And there's another thing. So Ted Cruz said the other day that most media outlets do not give Republicans or conservative commentators a slot to talk about voter irregularity. Plus, if you look at the press conference that happened, perhaps on the day the election results were declared by the media, the press conference of Donald Trump was abandoned. The press conference of Kayleigh McEnany, the White House press secretary, was also abandoned. So it's unfortunate that people are not able to hear both sides of the story, which I think is a fundamental right to natural justice. So that, I think, is the unfortunate element. It's not that Republicans do not come out in support. They are expressing their support. Unfortunately, the media doesn't show you that.
Right. So my next question would be, what's at stake for the Republicans? And what if the Democrats come to the power?
What's at stake? An election is at stake. That is the answer. They could. But the problems here is that, so one of the things, or in fact, there are many things that they actually raise. One of the major aspects that they raise is court packing. So right now we have 9 judges. There's a conservative majority in the Supreme Court. The Democrats would want to change that. It's called court packing. So they would want 15 judges, and they would want a liberal or progressive or Democratic majority. That's one. Second, they're planning on expanding the Senate with 2 more seats each in Washington and Puerto Rico. So that is another aspect that we have to worry about. Third is Kamala Harris once mentioned that she would like to, it was a question asked to her in a town hall session, and she said, I wouldn't mind changing the voting age to 16, which means more votes for Democrats, because if you look at youngsters, young voters, they're perhaps supporters of liberal or progressive worldview. As you grow older, when you get a job, when you have a family, you tend to be more conservative, which means Republican votes. So that, I think, these are kind of things that you have to worry about if you're a Republican, because they could change the election scenario in the United States. They could ensure that Republicans may never come back to power. Also, providing amnesty for illegal immigrants, because there are about, we don't know the exact number yet, but about 17 to 20 million illegal immigrants in the United States. If they're given amnesty, if they're given citizenship and voting rights, what happens is that these people usually would vote for Democrats. So this is what they want. It's not out of the love for people or tolerance or any of that. It's basically because they are a vote bank. So once these illegal immigrants are made citizens and they are given voting rights, these votes would automatically go to Democrats. Why is that a cause of concern? Because the biggest margin of victory or loss in a U.S. election, the history of U.S. elections, is 17 million. If you get 20 million votes, that means permanent electoral majority.
Right. So as you said, Kamala Harris has an increasing liking in the people. So my concern is not that. My concern is, why is Donald Trump having so much of hatred? Or why is it a hatred campaign going against Donald Trump?
Right. There are plenty of answers that I can give for that. But the one major answer would be that there is a clear media bias. So, for instance, if anybody's watching the show, for instance, they could actually take Google or YouTube and type in Barack Obama, for instance. If they type in Barack Obama, the kind of videos that they get, Barack Obama is holding a baby, Barack Obama is hugging a grandmother, a grandma, Barack Obama shares his ice cream, Barack Obama gives a wonderful speech, Barack Obama helps someone by lending money. These are the kind of videos that you get. Same with Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. But if you type in Donald Trump, you would not see one of his major policies or the good things that he's done being highlighted. It's called media bias or big tech bias, which is why Sundar Pichai, Jack Dorsey, and Mark Zuckerberg were called to the Senate for a hearing in October. So there is a bias when it comes to big tech. There is a bias when it comes to academia. There's a bias when it comes to media, because all mainstream media outlets, in fact, 95% of them are against Donald Trump. So you don't get to see the good things that Donald Trump has done, which is perhaps why a lot of people are unaware that he's been a good president, because he's kept his promises. People are not aware of that thanks to the media.
So you think the mainstream media, the tech companies, the giant tech companies are responsible for not bringing the policies of the Trump government open and to the public?
Right, it appears that way.
Right.
It appears that way. You can't conclusively say that. Yeah, a lot of people ask me, why do you support Trump? I don't support Trump as such. I support his policies. Because there's a saying in English that goes, people don't vote for the person, they vote for the ideology. So whose ideology do I support? When I look at it completely, I would say maybe Donald Trump's. Why? Because if you look at the policies that he had, if you look at the promises that he's kept, so for instance, a lot of people call him a racist. So my response to that would be, how would you define racism? If it's discriminating or oppressing a race, a particular race, then he hasn't done that. In fact, he has actually uplifted the black community. For instance, if you look at his policies, he has increased the median income to 9.5%. He has also ensured that black unemployment has come to a record low in 50 years, poverty a record low in history of the United States for blacks, and women. In the case of women, record low unemployment for women in 70 years. So there are plenty of policies. Again, when it comes to university spending, investments in black universities and colleges, he has raised it by 14%. He's brought forward the Police Reform Act, the Prison Reform Act, the Music Modernization Act. He has supported Blexit movement, which again supports blacks. So he's done a lot for the black community and for women, but yet he's called a racist and a sexist and a xenophobic person. I don't know. I clearly have no idea why. I would like to debate with someone on that.
Many times, the Donald Trump government has been accused of being an anti-immigration. So what's your take on that?
Well, this is the biggest misconception that people have, largely because he's not anti-immigration, he's actually anti-illegal immigration. And the reason being that, so let's say you want to go to the United States. So what would you do first? You would wait in a line, you would fill out an application form, you would wait for a decade, you would ensure that you do not have a criminal record, and you would attend an interview, and finally you get to realize the American dream. That's how it is. So if you go there to the United States after this long wait of 12 years and this whole process, and you figure out that there are people crossing the border selling drugs, what would you feel? It would be unfair to you. This is exactly what Donald Trump says as well. He says it is unfair to the documented legal immigrants that I let illegal immigrants in, number one. Number two, it is in the... So we often talk about Mumbai and the slum that we have there, Dharavi. There's a slum in Mexico where drug cartels... It is said that there are drug cartels in the slum, and these people bring in drugs. It is also true. There is proof for it. The data released by various research centers suggest this. So at least 10,000 children are sex trafficked across the same border, which is one of the reasons why he's building the wall. And 90% of all the fentanyl and drugs that come across to the United States are also from the same border, which is why there is a wall. So I don't think he's anti-immigration, because you must have noticed in the last 4 years how many people of your community, of your, let's say, neighborhood or even in your state would have actually immigrated to the United States. So that has happened. That is still happening in numbers. So he's not anti-immigration. If that was the case, nobody in India would have been able to go to the United States. Every year, at least 1.4 million people get to go to the United States. They actually welcome 1.4 million people, legal, documented people, to the United States. What are they against? Illegal immigrants. That's what they're against. So it's a misconception.
The Donald Trump government has often been very xenophobic, anti-women, misogynist, and this party is known for its divisive policies and creating hatred. What do you say?
Right. So it depends on what you mean by being divisive, because if you look at the history of the Democratic Party, if anything, they're the ones who's been divisive. Look at their history. Democratic Party, the party of Joe Biden, is the same party that promoted slavery, that imposed segregation, that opposed Reconstruction, that founded the Ku Klux Klan, the white supremacist group. Yet, who is called the white supremacist? Donald Trump. Who founded the white supremacy group? Democrats. So this is where it gets interesting. A lot of people are unaware of this. Even when it comes to rulings, in 1857, there was a court ruling, Democratic judges who said in a ruling in 1857 that blacks should be considered property, slaves should be considered property, they should not receive voting rights or citizenship. This is what they said. They opposed the 13th Amendment that abolished slavery. They opposed the 14th Amendment that gave slaves citizenship. They opposed the 15th Amendment that gave them voting rights. And it is the same, but Democratic Party did not have a single black person in their House of Representatives or Senate till 1935. Republicans had 22 by 1900. So who's the real divisive party? Who's the one who's actually oppressed the blacks? That's the other question. If you look at policies of Donald Trump as well, look at his policies, as I mentioned earlier, higher spending, police reform, prison reform that benefited 900 black their families. He's done a lot. His party has done a lot for blacks, and there is clear evidence for it because Vernon Jones, a Democrat, came out in support of Donald Trump in October. He campaigned for Donald Trump. He spoke in the RNC. Remember, he's a Democrat, he's black. And he says that the Democratic Party has kept them in a plantation, and Donald Trump has taken them out of that plantation. He has kept his promises, and he's also empowered the black community. You don't want to hear it from anyone else than a Democrat. So,
right. So, Mr. Nirmal, many of the media outlets and activists call and compare Donald Trump to Adolf Hitler. Is that an accurate analogy?
Well, I think Hitler would consider that an insult, number one. Because if you look at what happened in Germany, so during the time of Nazification, what Nazification essentially was, if the people who call him a Nazi should know that what Nazification was. So Nazification was a process during a period where Hitler was in power, where they brought everything, basically, all forms of mass communication under government control. So be it radio, news, television, theater, public gatherings, all of these things were brought under government control on the one hand, and on the other hand, they ensured that they silenced and censored and restricted and blocked their opponents with a differing view. They also had at the same time propaganda, art and literature that were going out. So if you compare that to what is happening in the United States right now, is the president really the one who's silencing people? Is he the one censoring? Is he the one restricting? No. If you look at what has happened just last week, the president is the one, his tweets were the ones that got flagged, his opinions were the ones that were made fun of, his speeches were the ones that were fact-checked, and his press conference was the one that got abandoned. If it was Hitler, do you think that would have happened?
Well, if you say that Donald Trump really cares about freedom of speech and expression and about the freedom of people to express what they think, then why do you think Donald Trump has so much against the Black Lives Matter?
So Donald Trump is not against the concept of Black Lives Matter. That is a misunderstanding because Black Lives Matter at the same time is a concept and is also an organization. In fact, there are two organizations of movements that started on the concept of Black Lives Matter. So essentially, Black Lives Matter, the concept means that your life and my life and a Mexican's life and a Chinese life or a black life, everything matters, okay? It is as important as mine, your life or anyone else's life. This is what Black Lives Matter, the concept means. Donald Trump supports that. But he does not support the organization of Black Lives Matter, largely because if you go to their website, anyone who watches this can go to their website and check what their mission is. The mission of the Black Lives Matter organization is to disrupt the nuclear family system. This has been explicitly mentioned in their mission statement. So to read that and to support the Black Lives Matter organization would be a hard thing to do for conservatives or anyone with a sane mind, number one. Number two, he has also contributed to the Black Lives Matter concept by supporting the Blexit movement. So there's something called Blexit movement, which is a movement that was instigated by Candace Owens, who's a conservative pundit. So this essentially, there is a huge difference. You can draw a big difference between Black Lives Matter and Blexit. Blexit essentially stands for Black Exit from the Democratic Party. What they do is their modus operandi is entirely different from BLM. Their modus operandi is to ensure that black people have jobs, that they stick to their families, that they are provided education, that they're given school supplies, that they're given financial assistance, emotional assistance. This is what Blexit ensures, and that's what Donald Trump supports. And there was a whole campaign by Blexit to vote for Donald Trump, which is perhaps why he got 20% more votes this time. Whereas Black Lives Matter, if you look at the organization Black Lives Matter and what they've done, they've actually incited a lot of violence. They've conducted, we've had riots, looting, shooting, destroying of black businesses, killing of black people, including 8-year-old children. So this is what essentially Black Lives Matter organization did, unfortunately. But the concept of Black Lives Matter is actually being supported by Donald Trump in the form of Blexit.
When you were talking about the vision of the Black Lives Matter on the website, that is a concept of destructing the nuclear families and the cultural values. How do you think Blexit, the movement of Blexit, improvises and empowers the life of black women?
Right. So if you look at the biggest problem facing the black community right now, it is single motherhood rate. 77% of women in the United States, black women in the United States, are single mothers. And Pew Research, in fact, suggests that if you are a single mother, if you are a child to a single mother, that could have a lot of consequences, including going to jail, committing a crime. The chances are high. So what Blexit essentially does is that they ensure that these children get education, they provide school supplies, they also give financial and emotional assistance. So actually they're the ones filling in the vacuum. They're the ones looking at the real issues and not saying that as a matter of reparations, you can go and destroy stores and burn buildings and put cars on fire. They don't say that. They don't incite violence. What they say is that we identify the problem. Your problem is the lack of education, which is perhaps why 13%, that is the amount of black people in the United States. So 13% of the people commit 65 or 60% of the crime, which is sad. Blexit is out there to ensure that that doesn't happen. They're out there to provide education, ensure that there are systems of family and faith that they adhere to. That's what they're trying to do.
Okay. When Donald Trump comes with the slogan that making America great again, what has Donald Trump done for America and its development?
Plenty. I think.
Can you point out?
Definitely. I mean, a lot of people are not aware of this, sadly. So he has, for instance, ensured, as far as America is concerned, he's ensured jobs. So let's compare with Obama for a bit there. 8 years of the Obama administration, he increased the median income by 5%. Donald Trump, in 4 years, increased the median income by 9.5%, brought down unemployment to a record low in the case of blacks, Hispanics, and Asians, brought down unemployment in the case of women by 70%. There has been no new wars. He has ensured that at least 12,000 factories opened. There were at least 5 lakh or 500,000 new manufacturing jobs. There's plenty that is done. In fact, the list is endless. There's plenty that is done, but the people are not aware of.
When I hear that, and when people hear that, there's a hope still remaining in the hearts of the people that Donald Trump still has a chance with regard to the lawsuits which have been filed in various courts.
Right.
Could you please explain on that?
Right. So there is hope, and there are prayers happening. There are campaigns happening. There was a large march that happened just the other day. So I would say the chances are slim. But is there a chance? Absolutely. So if you look at it state-wise, Georgia has already started a recount. Wisconsin will start one on Wednesday. Pennsylvania still under process. And the interesting thing about Pennsylvania is that, so people do not understand the concept of electoral votes, I assume, sometimes when I talk to them, because in Pennsylvania or in any state, the state legislature has the right to award electoral votes. Now, in Pennsylvania, the state legislature is controlled by Republicans. And they have specifically mentioned that unless you do an audit of the votes that happened that were cast in Pennsylvania, they will not be awarding electoral votes, is what they've said. So it's going to be interesting. Pennsylvania is really going to be interesting. If Trump can, take back all the 3 states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Georgia, or even Arizona. Unfortunately for Arizona, a lot of people might be wondering why Arizona does not have an automatic recount. Because Arizona, Biden perhaps won that by a small margin of 10,000 votes. Usually there has to be a recount, but there is a strange law in Arizona that says that if a recount can be done only if there is a vote difference of 500. Okay, so that's the problem. Trump could maybe try other ways to get a recount, but if he can pull back 3 states, he can definitely win, but the chances are slim.
Okay, when you say this, the first thing which strikes my mind is Trump has had a bad past, whereas Biden is a neat politician. What is your take on that?
Right, again, as I said initially, people don't vote for the person, they vote for the ideology. So if you look at Trump's policies, you would perhaps vote for him. I don't know, I may not vote for Trump the person, I would vote for Trump the ideology. And again, it's wrong to say that someone would vote for Biden only because he's a neat politician compared to Donald Trump. That would be completely wrong. Perhaps they don't know that because of the media bias. Because if you look back at the history of Joe Biden, he started off as a senator in 1972, and he ran for a presidential race in 1987. But his his political life has actually been full of controversies. If you look back at Hunter Biden, it's a recent controversy. So New York Post released an article on Hunter Biden's laptop it was actually given for repair, and there are plenty of things that they found out, including child pornography, including dealings that they had with China and Ukraine. So there's plenty of controversy surrounding him. Number one, sexual allegations. There are at least 8 sexual allegations against Joe Biden that the mainstream media tried to cover, out of which Tara Reid was a major allegation that Megyn Kelly eventually uncovered. Again, so there are plenty of things that Joe Biden has done as a person and as a politician that people may not like. Unfortunately, they're not being made aware of that. And also policy-wise, a lot of the things that Biden criticizes Trump of today, he had been advocating himself. Say, for instance, building of the wall. He said we had to build a wall that is at least 40 miles thicker. This is what he said. 700 miles of wall is what he actually advocated for. Now, when Donald Trump says it now, he claims that Donald Trump is xenophobic, but Joe Biden used to say that in the past. Again, if you look at his history of, let's say, political history, 48 years. He's been in the field for 48 years. He hasn't done much. In fact, he has actually made statements, sensitive statements. For example, there is a speech that's going around on YouTube where he called a set of army men I wouldn't even say that. He actually called them bastards. This is what he did. And also instances where he called black people super predators. So there are plenty of instances like that that people are not aware of. So if you are to weigh the people, again, I don't think Donald Trump is any bad compared to Joe Biden. Maybe Donald Trump has the edge, even if you look at the person or personality.
Many of the people say that Donald Trump has had a consistent track record of being a misogynist, and he's a person who does not women. What do you say?
Well, if you look at it from the perspective of the Republican Party, I don't think that's true, because if they said that he's an oppressor of women, if that was the case, he wouldn't have Kayleigh McEnany as a press secretary. He wouldn't have had Sarah Sanders as a previous press secretary, Kellyanne Conway. And these people who say this should actually listen to people like Ivanka Trump and Ivana Trump, the first wife of, in fact, ex-wife of Donald Trump, and listen to what they say. Again, the people who's been closely involved with Donald Trump always say that he's been a good person. He's been good towards women. And also, look at the policies. Even his policies have been good to women. There's been a fair bit of, in fact, great deal of empowerment. If you look at, the unemployment rate, as I mentioned twice already, 70-year low. Median income, even for Indian women. So if you look at an Indian household today, compared to 2012 or 2008, a household from the Indian diaspora earns about $100,000 per year on average. This is Pew Research, the gold standard research that is saying this. So that is the amount of impact that his policies has had. And when you compare what Joe Biden, the Democratic Party, has done, there's so much that you can be upset about. For instance, Amy Coney Barrett, a mother of 7, a strong woman with a great track record. And you know what the Democrats called them? They say they respect women. They called her a slave owner. Why? Because she adopted 2 children, black children from Haiti, and they called her a white supremacist, a slave owner for that. Now, if you respect women, why would you do that? Number one. Number two, they said they believe all women when it came to the Me Too movement. Why didn't they believe Tara Reid? She was out there giving an allegation about Joe Biden. They ignored her completely. They did not even call her to the mainstream media to express her views. And they say they respect women. I don't understand.
Okay, then who is more tolerant and inclusive, whether the Republicans or the Democrats?
If you look at the policies, if you look at the history, always Republican, I would say, because as I said, again, look back at the history of Democrats, never been inclusive, never been tolerant. If you look at what I said, and even the case of Candace Owens, who started the Blexit movement in support of blacks, they don't like her. They in fact call her a traitor. They call her an idiot for supporting Donald Trump. If they really cared for women, would they do that? These are the questions that are lingering in my mind and the minds of Republicans.
When you say that Donald Trump is very much caring about the lives of Americans, why did he compromise with the lives of America during the COVID-19 pandemic? And don't you think that he has to take the full responsibility of the mishaps which happened on the administration's part?
Right. So if you were to ask me, should he take full responsibility? Should he take responsibility? Yes. Should he take full responsibility? No. Why? Because a couple of things that Trump wasn't good at was at mandating masks, was at ensuring that there were no large social gatherings. He couldn't quite control it. So that was bad from his part. But again, we have to know that the system in the United States, it's a strong federal system where there are 26 governors, state governors who are Republicans and 24 state governors who are Democrats. So in this system, when you look at New York, for instance, so what happens in a state is under the control of a governor. So Andrew Cuomo is the governor of New York. So what happens there can perhaps be controlled by Andrew Cuomo better than Donald Trump. So for the rising number of cases, corona cases, or the deaths in New York or California or Massachusetts, I don't think Donald Trump should be held responsible. The people who are responsible there are the Democratic governors, and they should be the ones held responsible, number one. Number two, the mainstream media. I don't understand why mainstream media had articles and documentaries and videos suggesting that this was in March, that COVID was nothing but a flu. Washington Post said this. There are plenty of other mainstream media outlets also said this. They said this is nothing worse than a flu. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to sit home for this. Okay, it's nothing to worry about. This is what they said. People believed that. They went out in the streets. Nancy Pelosi had a huge rally in Chinatown in March, perhaps by the end of March. If they really cared for people, they shouldn't have done that. They wouldn't have done that. So when you look at what Trump has done, so for instance, he ensured that there was a ban on flights from China. He was again called as racist and xenophobic for doing that. So what should he be made responsible for? I would say 60% responsibility for Donald Trump, 40% for the state governors, and for the people, it's strange. You know what happened? So during the elections, the counties that were most affected by corona cases all voted for Trump. If they really thought Trump was responsible, they wouldn't cast a vote for him, right?
Okay. So when it comes to COVID-19 pandemic, I would like to relate more with India. India has also suffered a lot on account of COVID-19. And at that point in time, Donald Trump made a statement for getting paracetamols from India, right? So my concern is, who will be better for India, whether the Republicans or the Democrats?
I would say Republicans, largely because if you look at the policy, people are confused between what a person says and what they do. For instance, Donald Trump made a statement in his second and the final presidential debate that India's air is filthy. Would you agree? That's my question. Do you think India's air is filthy? You would, right? If you look at the stats, it is filthy. So why he said that, he's very blunt. Okay, he's not a statesman that way, but he's very blunt, but that is true. If you look at Washington, D.C., the place where he belongs, the air quality index is 14 ppm. The last time he visited a place called Ahmedabad in India, the air quality index is over 350 ppm. So it's pretty bad. In Mumbai, it's pretty bad. The capital of Delhi, it's bad and it's going to get worse in the winter after Diwali. So he isn't wrong when he said that. But if you look at policies, he has always supported India when it came to issues relating to Pakistan, whereas Kamala Harris has...
That's where I would like to interrupt you and ask you, when it comes to relations with India, the recent statements made by, or the stand taken by Kamala Harris with regard to India and Kashmir, what's your take on that?
Well, as an Indian, I would say that that statement was, if I analyze it, if I dissect that statement, that pretty much is anti-Indian, because she is an advocate of free Kashmir, which again means that people know what it means. So that is a concern for people, number one. Number two, when it comes to religious liberty, when you look at India, so if I vote for, be it anyone, like if I vote for BJP or Congress or the Communist Party, I would still have my religious liberty. That's not the case in the United States. Kamala Harris did not stand for religious liberty while she was an AG in California. She stood for, let's say, Planned Parenthood, and there was a case that was filed against Planned Parenthood, in fact, a video that came out against Planned Parenthood. And this person, I don't want to mention his name, he came out with this video where officials of Planned Parenthood were discussing selling baby parts, right? So this video was presented to Kamala Harris, and instead of pursuing what really happened with Planned Parenthood, what she did was she ensured that this person's home was raided. She ensured that he had to suffer from mental torture. This is what she did. And essentially, it's because there is an 81,000 campaign fund that was released by Planned Parenthood to Kamala Harris. So there are corruption scandals against all these people. What you have to look at, again, as I said, whether you vote for Biden, whether you support Biden, Kamala Harris, or Trump, it's the policies that you have to look at. I'm happy with the fact, I'm proud of the fact that she's Indian. I was in Chennai for quite a bit, so I'm also proud that she's from Tamil Nadu. But that's assessing a person. When you assess a policy as an Indian, I may not be so happy. Also, as a person who is, who has faith, and I also believe in religious liberty, meaning people can say that they believe in a God or they don't believe in a God, that's fine. But when you specifically impose, a structure where you cannot believe in God, that is harmful, which is where conservatives in the United States are concerned.
So you want me to understand this way, that is, religious liberty is more important to Republicans than of Democrats.
Absolutely, it is, which is why conservatives support them, which is why Christian groups and evangelicals support Donald Trump. They've been praying for him from the date of the election. And so I think religious liberty is a major concern because 50% of people in the United States are really concerned about this, and they want a change to that, which is why they want Donald Trump in power. Although there's a minuscule chance, a tiny bit of chance, you can still hope for it, maybe.
Okay. So there was a statement from the part of the Donald Trump government that going to come up with a vaccine for COVID-19. Many people brushed it aside, calling it as a rumor and an election tactic. What do you say?
You should be calling it an election tactic, largely because there are reports that Pfizer already had it ready by mid-October, probably by the end of October. And they did not release reports on it, largely because there was an election coming. And if they did release a report on it, that would actually favor Donald Trump. Maybe they didn't want that. Now they've come up, know that Biden is a projected winner. They've come up with a report saying, okay, we will provide vaccines to people. Remember, it's the same people who actually, criticized Donald Trump for making up stories about a possible vaccine. Now they're, in support of Biden. They're actually congratulating Biden for Pfizer creating a vaccine. I think the credit to that probably should go to Donald Trump.
Okay. So 3 things why you feel that Donald Trump should have been in power again.
Right. One, as I said, the trend was in support of Republicans, including gaining in the Senate and the House of Representatives, governorship, and also the large number of votes that he got in comparison to himself and Barack Obama. Second, if you look at Barack Obama, there was a certain charisma to him. So if you told me today that Barack Obama received 80 million votes, I wouldn't be surprised. Neither would you be, right? But to think that a person whose campaign was largely characterized by near zero turnouts, by plenty of gaffes, by corruption scandals, by sexual allegations, by sensitive remarks on minorities, to believe that that person got nearly 80 million votes or 78 million votes as it stands now is really hard to believe. That's one thing. Second, there are reports coming out and sworn affidavits given by not just Donald Trump. A lot of people think, okay, Donald Trump is going to go for a litigation. He is challenging this in the court. That's not true. It isn't just Donald Trump who's challenging this in the court. Plenty of Republicans are challenging this in the court. Plenty of polling officers are challenging this in the court. There are plenty of people, voters, who are challenging this in the court. So it isn't just Donald Trump who's going and challenging this in the court, which means that there has been voter fraud. Another aspect of it is Dominion, which is a application software for counting votes. Interestingly, Dominion is where an issue happened where votes got switched to Joe Biden, and it was figured out, I believe, although I'm not quite sure. So there's one statement that Republicans made about Dominion software, which is true, because Dominion software, there are plenty of Democrats that have a stake or a share in Dominion software, including Nancy Pelosi.
I've been hearing the good sides of the Donald Trump government. But if we go to the mainstream media, we cannot see the same. Now, if I were to find good things about Donald Trump, where do I go?
Well, mainstream media outlets, as I said, are biased, so you can't find it in CNN or MSNBC or even Fox News these days. So one media outlet that I would suggest for conservatives would be Newsmax. It's available on YouTube as well. And even when it comes to Twitter, they're basically flagging and deleting and blocking and censoring people who talk about voting irregularities. So if they want to consider an alternative, that would be Parler, which is one of the most downloaded apps in the last 7 days or so. So these are two alternatives that people have. They can actually go to Newsmax and Parler for expressing their views and also obtaining views from people in a conservative angle.
And I would say there's a third more option which is available that is coming to you.
Right. I wish people came to me. I wish. I really did.
I really hope that there might be more chances. And let's say a good decision, a good outcome should be coming out of this election.
Right. When you look at the chances, again, as I said, I'm not giving great hope to Republicans. 90%, I would say Joe Biden is the president because the date of certification is closing in. So you don't really have a lot of time. If Trump were to make litigations and prove this in the court, there isn't a lot of time left. But he does have a chance. He does have a 10% chance. And if he's able to pull it off, that could be the biggest news of the 21st century. Also, it could also open up and it could also, expose the fraud, not just from the part of the election the system of election, but also from the part of the media. And that's what I think a lot of people are hoping for, not just a Donald Trump result, not just a result in favor of Donald Trump, but a result that opens up or exposes the voter fraud, irregularities, and the bias of the media.
So how long should I wait for getting a final outcome?
Well, you never know, maybe in a week or two. But to say officially, I would say December 14th, that's when all electoral votes are awarded by states. So you might have to wait till maybe December 14th, barely 3 weeks away from now. But as I said, slim chances, but is there a chance? Absolutely yes.
I thank you so much, Mr. Nirmal Abraham, for being so much rational to your answers, wherein your answers were reasoned with facts and figures. I thank you for expressing your opinions on the US presidential elections. And I thank all the viewers for joining us. And let's wait for the official results to be declared. We do not know whether if it is Donald Trump or Joe Biden who will be winning the elections. But what we seek is good policies should be coming out which can benefit all the people in this world. And as we say, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the world is one family. Thank you so much.